remember the day on your show when President Obama said, Assad must go. And I looked at you and Joe and I said, huh? How's he going to do that? Where's the policy for that?
Right.
And we know they sent in the CIA to overthrow Assad. The CIA and Saudi Arabia together in covert operations tried to overthrow Assad. It was a disaster. Eventually it brought in both ISIS as a splinter group to the jihadists that went in. It also brought in Russia. So we have been digging deeper and deeper and deeper. What we should do now is get out.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Nothing could be more proven from that famous quote than what we witnessed in the Syrian civil war with the United States covertly funding Syrian ultra-Orthodox jihadists like Jabhat al-Nusra, Arhar al-Sham, which are Salafi jihadists fighting against the Bashir al-Assad government. In 2011, CIA Director David Petraeus proposed a covert program arming the Salafi jihadists in the hopes of overthrowing the Assad government. U.S. President Barak Obama at the time had not given the green light to the program. He actually rejected it. But he was lobbied hard by King Abdullah II from Jordan and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Both had a vested interest in witnessing the country, Assad, being deposed. In 2012, Timber Sycamore began constructing the first leg of the operations. It's mimicked similar to a previous operation called Operation Cyclone, which was the largest CIA-funded operation in its history, which saw the CIA through the Pakistan ISI and independent Saudi donors fund and arm and train the Afghan Mujahideen fighters against the Soviets in Afghanistan in 1979. This is similar to that, although in this instance, we're not fighting the communists. They're actually fighting against a Shiite leader, an Alawite leader, actually. And the vested interests for Assad, of course, are Hezbollah in Lebanon and, of course, Iran, who are fighting against the terrorist Salafi jihadists at the same time, as well as the Turkish Kurds and the PYK. Funding the Salafis organizations like the Islamic State, Jabhat al-Nusra, Arhar al-Sham, are, of course, the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Turkey, the United States, and, of course, Israel, who in 2011 and 12 were treating al-Nusra fighters in hospitals at the Golan Heights. Now, this is public information, and I'll link that to the bottom of the screen in the description box for you. Now, the principal backers of Timber Sycamore, which was the code name for the operation constructed under David Petraeus, who was the CIA director at the time, are, of course, the United States, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia were using covert financing, sales of arms, which were directed to these Salafi organizations. Now, according to the New York Times, the program initially allowed U.S. forces to train the Salafi groups in the use of military equipment, but not to provide equipment to them directly. But they knew where this equipment was going to anyway. In other words, they didn't want to be implicated directly, so they allowed the Saudi government and their operatives to give U.S.-aided weapons to these groups. And of course, Saudi Arabia being the primary influence of these Salafi groups because of the faith which is co-constructed the country itself, Wahhabi Islam. These people don't follow the tenets of the Quran. They go by the hadiths, basically Ibn Hanbali, Ibn Taymiyyah. Now, a classified State Department cable signed by then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton reported that the Saudi donors themselves were a major support for the Sunni militants, not just in Syria, but globally around the world. Now, I've just did a video explaining about the U.S.-Saudi relationship and why I think it's detrimental for the Middle East. You should watch that to gain a little bit of an understanding about the Wahhabi influence in Saudi Arabia and what kind of groups has created throughout the years. Now, Timber Sycamore was run by the Military Operations Command in Amman, Jordan, and they provided Kalashnikovs, mortars, rocket-propelled grenades, anti-tank guided missiles, night vision goggles, anything to get to these groups in the hopes of fighting against the Syrian military, which were aided by Hezbollah and, of course, the Iranian Shia factions that were helping to repel these ghoulish Salafi organizations. Now, be that as it may, the program was highly classified at the time. Nobody knew much about the program Timber Sycamore at all, but it was leaked to the press in 2016. And in 2017, U.S. President Donald Trump ended the program, which was one of the few good things that he did, as well as being the first president since Jimmy Carter not to start a new war. Even though I think Trump is an illiterate and a narcissist egomaniac who basically didn't get any of the troops out of the Middle East. He continued these wars in Syria, Libya, aided Saudi Arabia, gave them the biggest military aid package in 2017, which amounted to $108 billion in military aid, and most of that went to the slaughter of Yemen civilians as well as the Houthis. But most of these people were civilians, and it's the largest humanitarian crisis in the world at the current time. So, as you could see, the United States, through their Central Intelligence Agency, as well as their allies in the region, the Gulf, Israel, Jordan, are fighting against these former Arab nationalist states, which are primarily Shia or Shiites, because it's a Sunni Shia war that the Saudis see. For the United States, it's basically military expansionism, and of course, having these Arab nations depose of their presidents, and in hopes of a president that is favorable to the West. For Israel, it's basically simple. getting rid of the powerful Arab states, whether they be Sunni or Shia. They see the Arab world as basically one giant enemy in itself, in its own right. And of course, they can continue their human rights violations against the Palestinians, in which Syria is a big Palestinian pro-rights advocate as well. No contradictory there. And so that's basically it about Timber Sycamore. The program ran for 6 years. As you could see, the United States war on terror is a farce because we're aiding and abetting terrorist organizations for a greater geopolitical goal at the behest of American civilians. Here we are bombing Islamic State posts in Syria, while at the same time we're purchasing oil from the Islamic State and giving them military aid as well as Jeeps. You can see these new Toyota trucks in videos shot in 2015-16, Islamic State taking over areas like Diaz Azor, and you'll see them in these brand new Hummers and trucks, and they're American trucks. Well, who do you think gave them to them? Well, the Central Intelligence Agency. And as you can see, there are multiple players involved in trying to continue the destabilization of these Arab states in the Middle East. And it's a complete disaster for the United States and the future hegemony in the region. So this is the reason why I will continue to make these videos and speak out about the United States crimes that are happening abroad, which are not going to be reported by the legacy media here in the States, whether it's going to be from the left or right, because there is no left and right paradigm in the media when it comes to certain issues, being that of the military-industrial complex, our geopolitical influence in the Middle East, because because stations like CNN, Fox, ABC, MSNBC are run by very few corporations that have a vested interest in the military-industrial complex, as well as the Pentagon, as well as foreign lobbies like the Gulf, Saudi Arabia, Israel. And these are very powerful lobbies. And of course, the independent donors from abroad, basically from the Gulf, who have billions of dollars invested. The United States will continue to buy cheap oil, petroleum from Saudi Arabia because we regulate the oil, because we act as their military in the region. And we have hundreds of billions at stake regarding not just the petroleum or the oil regulation, the oil market, but also we use Saudi Arabia, like we do with Israel, as a military strategic vantage point in the region. So we could continue arming these jihadists so that we can also extend the Pentagon budget, which is higher and higher every year before the Senate Select Committee and the House Appropriations Act, so we could continue the war on terror by fighting the very people that we are covertly arming. And you're not going to hear that in the media. And so I'll leave the video at that, and I'll see you again.